Now for some more reaction at home to the events in Washington, former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull now joins me. Good afternoon and welcome to you.
Thank you.
Firstly, can I ask for your reaction to the events we've witnessed in the US Capitol today?
I was appalled, just absolutely staggered that President Trump would go so far as to not only encourage people to come to Washington and demonstrate against the lawful election of Joe Biden, but then incite them to go on to the Congress and encourage them in the acts that they undertook. I mean, this is beyond belief that the president would go this far. But throughout his time, people have always assumed that there would be some limit on what Trump would do, but he has no limit. He has no limits and no filters.
Why do you think that is, that people might not have believed he would want to fulfil his statements?
Well, look, you're getting into a sort of parallel universes, parallel media silos. You've had Trump's authoritarian populism, his support for conspiracy theories, his determination to exacerbate existing divisions, and create new ones in America. All of this has been amplified and enabled by right-wing media, particularly Rupert Murdoch. Donald Trump could not have got where he did without Fox News. Murdoch, knowing Trump was unfit to be president, consciously set out to put him there because he wanted to have his man in the White House, right? And you've got a right-wing media ecosystem in America that supports and amplifies Trump. And of course, you've got all of the chaos on social media. The United States doesn't have the equivalent of the ABC. It doesn't have the equivalent of a government broadcaster that is sort of holding the centre, if you like.
Would you concede that Fox News did begin to challenge the president?
Oh, yeah, well, some of their programs have started to back away after the election loss. That's true, but the fact is, that's too little too late. The Murdoch's role in this incredible damage to America. Just think about this, Kirsten. Donald Trump has done more damage to America during his 4 years, both internally, domestically, and in terms of its international standing, than any of its adversaries could have imagined possible. What has Putin sought to do? He sought to foment division in the United States and other Western countries. He sought to undermine confidence in the electoral systems and the democracy. Trump has been doing that on steroids, with the biggest megaphone in the world.
You were Australian Prime Minister when Donald Trump became president. Did you think that this could be the result? No,
look, I didn't. I sort of knew Trump. I didn't know Trump, but I dealt with big narcissistic bullies like him in the past. So I didn't suck up to him. I didn't, do a sort of all the way with LBJ type of thing. I stood up to Trump, and I had a few tough moments with him, as everyone knows, which he was very unhappy about. But everyone assumed, and I described this in my book at some length, but everybody assumed in the global community that Trump in office would be institutionalized by the White House, in the sense that, all of the craziness of the campaign trail would be altered, would go away, and he would be a more conventional, sort of Republican president. Of course, he was anything but. He's not a conservative. All of these so-called conservatives on the right wing of politics, whether it's in America or even in Australia, that support Trump, are not supporting a conservative. They're supporting an authoritarian populist whose agenda, as we're seeing now very, very clearly, even the people with the most sort of Trump-coloured glasses surely can now see that what we've got is somebody who is only interested in his own power.
How difficult is it for Australia, and has it been for Australia, to deal with the United States while President Trump has been in power, given that this country is our key strategic ally?
Well, look, I think the answer is the relationship between Australia and the US is very strong. It depends on a lot more than the President and the Prime Minister. So, you know, we had a few tough moments. I mean, I had two major run-ins with Trump. One which ended very unhappily, although we got to the right answer. As you know, I'd done a deal on refugee resettlement with Obama, which Trump did not want to honour, and we had a furious phone call, which, you know, the transcript of which was leaked by the White House at one point. So everyone knows it was very strong stuff. I stood up to him. I persuaded him, much against his better judgment, I guess, to go along with the Obama deal, but he was furious about it. Then he wanted to, and his advisors all wanted to, put tariffs on Australian steel and aluminium, which would have done enormous damage to us, and they whacked them on every other country. I managed to persuade him, and it took quite an effort over many discussions, not to do so. But there, I have to say, he did listen to my arguments, and we got to the right outcome. But the thing with Trump is that what I found in my limited dealings with him was that he was a big bully, reminded me of some other big bullies I've known in my life, Kerry Packer, Jimmy Goldsmith, Bob Maxwell, quite a few, and that you don't win any respect by being a yes man or a sycophant. Having said that, of course, it's you know, those type of personalities, particularly if you work for them or if you're an American, you know, they can penalise you if you don't obey them. And you look at the way he's threatened people. I mean, Governor Kemp of Georgia's about as right-wing a Republic governor as you could get, but because he didn't overthrow the legally valid election results in Georgia, Trump has said he's going to come after him when he comes up for re-election. So it's like it's like a kind of a mob boss, you know, saying, if you don't do what I want, regardless of whether it's lawful, I'm going to come and get you. And this is what we've got to. This is the
you clearly feel much more freely available to criticise President Trump now that you're no longer Prime Minister.
Well, I am. Yeah, sure.
Do you think the Morrison government's condemnation of events in the capital today was strong enough?
Look, I think it looks a bit, when you look at things, other leaders have said it does look a bit weak. To be a bit tepid, I suppose is probably a better word, but it's a judgment call. I mean, the one thing you've got to be careful if you're the Prime Minister of Australia is you don't want to get drawn into running a commentary on American politics, and I get that, and I used to resist requests to do that, but this is pretty special. You know, this is not the ins and outs of gun policy or various other domestic policies. This is a president actively seeking to undermine the credibility and integrity of the democracy that he is supposed to be leading.
And on that point,
this is right out there.
And on that point, would you like to see stronger condemnation from the current Prime Minister? And should Scott Morrison, as another former Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, has called for, return the presidential award, the Legion of Merit, which was awarded to him by President Trump on account of what has taken place today? Well,
I think it's a great pity that Scott didn't, because the way this would have worked, there would have been an inquiry, a confidential inquiry as to whether the Prime Minister would be happy to accept that award. I think it's a great pity that Morrison didn't, let it be known, make some tactful diplomatic excuse and not accept it, because it is, it's always a bit fraught, I think, with Australian leaders accepting honours from other countries. By the way, that's something that You know, maybe after you've left office, you can, you know, you're a free agent then. But I think it's always it's a bit questionable. I think it would have been better to avoid having received it in the first place. I suspect the better course of action now is to do nothing. You know, the thing that we've got to be very careful about is not trespassing, for when I say we, I mean the Australian Prime Minister, is not trespassing into, you know, sort of interfering with or over-commenting on US politics. But I do think the events of the last 24 hours are quite extraordinary. I mean, you have had a mob, some of whom were armed, stormed the US Capitol. And the American president encouraged them to do so, incited them. Now, you know, that surely calls for our Prime Minister to at least condemn or deplore, use a different word, deplore the statements, the conduct of President Trump in the last 24 hours, and call on him to do everything he can to get the mob to disperse and go home, which seems to be now happening. But look, you know, it's a fraught area, Kirsten. I can understand all of the things that would be going through Morrison's mind, and he'd be worried about what offence he might give to Americans generally, and indeed what retribution Trump could wield in the next 2 weeks. You know, so you're sort of walking on eggshells to some extent, dealing with a guy like Trump. I mean, I was able to get some very good outcomes for Australia while I was Prime Minister, but I didn't do that by sucking up to him, or let alone telling him what he wanted to hear.
It is terrific to get your insight on this. Former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, thank you.
Thanks so much.